You ever look at the price of gas and just feel totally frustrated? I mean, one year it's totally fine, and the next it is just absolutely draining your wallet. Well, believe it or not, this isn't just an annoying part of having a car. It's actually a perfect real-life problem, one that mathematicians use to understand how things change over time. In today's explainer, we're looking at exactly that.
Let's put some numbers to it. Think back to the years between 2005 and 2012. The average cost of a gallon of gas shot up from $2.31 to $3.68. Okay, so that's a total increase of exactly $1.37. But just knowing that total jump, it kind of doesn't give us the whole picture. The real mathematical question we need to be asking is, how much did that price change per year? And that brings us to our learning promise for today. By the end of this explainer, you are going to deeply understand this core concept, what we call the average rate of change. We'll master the exact formula behind it together, and you'll see exactly how to apply it to figure out the real-world behavior of graphs. Section 1. The gas price problem.
Okay, let's really break this down. A rate of change basically just describes how an output quantity, like our gas price, changes relative to a change in an input quantity, like the year. Now, to find this average rate of change, we just divide the total change in the output by the total change in the input. In math speak, we call this delta y divided by delta x. That little Greek letter delta, the one that looks like a triangle, it literally just means change in. So step 1, calculate the difference in your outputs, which is y2 minus y1. Step 2, calculate the difference in your inputs, x2 minus x1. And step 3, just find the ratio of those two differences. So for our gas prices over those 7 years, it was $1.37 change divided by 7 years, which comes out to roughly 19.6 cents per year.
Now, hold on a second. Before we move on, let's do a quick retention reset, because I always get this question from students. Wait, does the order of the points actually matter when I subtract? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. It's such a common mistake. If you use y2 minus y1 on the top, you have to use x2 minus x1 on the bottom. If you mix up the coordinate order, like doing y2 minus y1, but then dividing by x1 minus x2, your final sign is going to be backwards, and the whole answer will be totally wrong. Always keep your coordinates consistent. Section 2. Average rate of change.
Now that we've got the basic idea down, and we know exactly which trap to avoid, let's look at another real-world scenario. Because look, this formula isn't just for economics, it's everywhere, especially when you're traveling. Let's look at Anna's road trip. At hour 0, she's 10 miles from home. Maybe she just grabbed a friend. 6 hours later, her distance from home is 292 miles. So our input variable here is time, and our output variable is distance. And we want to figure out her average speed over the 6-hour interval.
So we just apply our delta y over delta x formula, right? The change in distance is 292 miles minus 10 miles. That's 282 miles. The change in time is 6 hours minus 0 hours, which is just 6 hours. When we divide that out, 282 divided by 6, we get 47. Boom. Anna's average speed, which is her average rate of change, is 47 miles per hour.
But let's pause for a second. We've seen an increase in gas prices and an increasing distance on a road trip, but what happens to our formula when the output actually goes down? Like, what does a negative result actually mean in the real world?
Well, it's pretty simple, actually. A negative rate of change just signifies a decrease. For example, between 2007 and 2009, gas prices actually dropped, thankfully, from $2.84 down to $2.41. If we plug those numbers into our formula, $2.41 minus $2.84 gives us a change of negative $0.43 over those 2 years. Divide that, and you get an average rate of change of negative $0.22 per year. It literally just means the output is going down while the input is going up.
Section 3. Riding the graph roller coaster. Let's shift gears here from the strict algebra formulas to visual graphs. Honestly, the best way to picture a mathematical function is to imagine a giant roller coaster track. As your coaster car moves from left to right, which just means your input values are getting bigger, the track is going to slant in different directions. We say a function is increasing on an interval if the track slants upward. During these upward sections, your average rate of change is positive. Conversely, a function is decreasing if the track slants downward as you move to the right. On those downhill sections, your average rate of change is negative. Section 4. Local peaks and valleys.
But hey, a roller coaster doesn't just go straight up or straight down forever, right? The best parts are the transitions, those moments where you stop going up and suddenly start plunging down. In math, these transition points have a special name. We call them local extrema.
When a function changes from increasing to decreasing, like the very summit of a hill on our coaster, that point is called a local maximum. It's the highest point compared to the little area immediately around it. On the flip side, when a function changes from decreasing back to increasing, so the very bottom of a dip in the track, that's a local minimum.
Okay, hold up. Let me stop you right here, because this is a super common spot for confusion. Students always ask me, wait, this is important. Does a local peak mean it's the absolute highest point on the entire graph? The key word here is local. A local extremum is only the highest or lowest point in its specific, immediate neighborhood. Think about it. A roller coaster can have a small hill right at the start before hitting a massive, terrifyingly tall hill later on. That first hill, yes, it's a local maximum, but it's definitely not the highest point on the entire ride.
So how do we actually spot them? Well, if you're looking at a graph, step 1 is to scan it from left to right. Visually locate the exact input value, the x-coordinate, where the graph changes direction from increasing to decreasing. That gives you the location. Then, step 2 is to look at the y-coordinate at that specific spot. That y value, that is your actual local maximum value.
Section 5. The absolute limits. Let's build on that last idea. We just established that a local peak is only the highest point in its little neighborhood. But what if we do want to find the absolute highest or lowest point of the entire ride? We really need to distinguish between the two. The absolute maximum is the single highest y-coordinate on the entire domain of the function. Period. Nothing goes higher. The absolute minimum is the absolute lowest y-coordinate on the entire domain. So while a local maximum just has to be taller than the points right next to it, an absolute maximum has to be taller than or equal to every single point on the entire graph.
Before we wrap things up today, I want to challenge your intuition with one final question. If you look at any graph in the world, does every single function have an absolute maximum or an absolute minimum? Think about what you already know about basic algebra functions for a second. The answer is actually no. No way. Not every function has an absolute extremum. Take the classic toolkit function f of x equals x cubed. The right side of that graph points up and just keeps going infinitely forever. There is no highest point, and the left side points down and goes infinitely downward. No lowest point. So that function, it has absolutely no absolute maximum or minimum at all. All right, let's quickly summarize the key takeaways we promised at the start of this explainer. The average rate of change is simply the change in output over the change in input, delta y over delta x. Remember, always keep your coordinate order consistent so you don't get a backward sign. And when you're looking at graphs, just think of the roller coaster. Local extrema are your transition peaks and valleys, while absolute extrema represent the absolute highest and lowest points on the entire graph. I want to leave you with one quick, practical thought experiment to tie this math into real-world physics before our next explainer. If you throw a baseball straight up into the air and graph its height over time, what does its local maximum represent in real life? Think about that very precise moment the ball stops going up right before it starts falling back down. That rate of change transition is literally everywhere